All right, now welcome back to the second edition or second episode of Safe Guns, Fun Guns podcast. And yes, I am Jason Sessions, and here today we are actually going to be going over a few other talking points on gun lists as far as my favorite and some of the best concealed carries on the market at the moment. But before we dive into that, please visit us at our Facebook page at facebook.com/Safe Guns Fun Guns. And then, of course, you can always contact us here at the podcast at Safe Guns Fun Guns at outlook.com. I am also happy to say that we are on Spotify and Anchor FM and in the process of working on getting on Stitcher. We are broadcasting on the Chrome podcast page as well. So, again, I want to thank y'all all for joining us today for this second edition of Safe Guns, Fun Guns. So, we're going to have a couple of lists that we're going to go through around surrounding guns and certain gun types. There is a list that's primarily my recommendations, which isn't conclusive, and I'm not saying that mine are better than any others, but I only recommend the ones I have physically shot and liked for whatever the reason is. But we're also going to go over some of the top ranking ones that you can find on several lists online with the NRA's list or Pew Pew Tactical. And I'll also probably make a few comments because there's a couple on the list that are fantastic guns. However, I'm not a big fan of. So, brings me to another point though. It doesn't matter what list you look at. It doesn't matter what gun people tell you should have. What matters is what gun works best for you in your situation. Not everybody is going to like the 1911 styles. Not everybody's going to like Glock. Not everybody is going to be set up to carry Smith & Wesson or what have you. Some people are more open carry peoples. Some are more concealed carry. So that's going to affect your gun choice quite a bit. And really, any gun that you get, you want to shoot a good 100 rounds before you can make a confident decision on it. Which is where it comes in handy to have a friend that has a variety of guns that you can choose, or several friends that have variety of guns that you can shoot. So keep all that in mind as we go through these lists, because again, it is not a list that's going to necessarily fit for everybody, because each person has a little bit different needs than the next. So, one of the top guns, or I should say one of the top brands in the gun market today is actually Glock. Now, I am not a fan of Glock. However, these are solid firearms that are reliable, and there's really not too much I can say against it. My biggest critique on Glock for me is I just don't really like the way that the handle feels in my hand. It's just doesn't fit the way that I want my firearms to fit. So that's part of the reason why I'm not a big fan of the Glocks. But everybody should at least try to shoot a couple, because they are solid guns, and if they work for you and for your needs, then I say go for it. Glock's usually reasonably priced, and they have reasonable, a good amount of variations, I should say. Good amount of variations of each of their guns. So there's some good concealed carry ones that aren't too long, that doesn't have a lot of bulkiness to it, and then there is some of their full size models that of course would be a little bit more bulky. So that's something that's going to have to be for the individual, though. But Glock, as a whole, is a solid brand. Has been strong in the market for years, and is something that any new shooter should probably take a look at least test fire. So now to get to a little bit more specifics. Now, this next gun that's on the list, and this list is not in any particular order, is just a list that I've put together to kind of outline the basic things that are out there and basic variations that are out there for a concealed carry person, is where I really kind of try to focus. Again, this podcast is all about self-defense and personal protection. So obviously most of these guns will be for CCW people, because there might be new people out there. CCW's concealed carry weapon permit. So in some states call it LTCs, some call it concealed carry, and just leave it at that. So there's a couple of different initials out there, but CCW is probably the broadest term that you'll find on most blogging sites or most gun sites when they're talking about personal protection and concealed carry permit holders or market. All right, so this next model is actually Smith & Wesson, which by and large Smith & Wesson is one of those okay guns. I've never really had any complaints about them. And the shield is definitely, I have no complaint about. I have shot the shield, and it is a solid firearm. It's reasonably sized. The slide width, or the width of the firearm, is less than an inch. A hair less, but it's less than an inch. It stands about 5 inches tall. The overall length of the gun is just over 6 inches. And the weight's pretty low on it as well. It's only about 1.3 pounds. It does have a polymer bottom half, grips, and the whole bottom half of the gun, the whole receiving for the slide is all polymer. I could be wrong, but I don't think there's any gun that has a polymer top, but I'm going to make sure that I clearly state that it could be. It's feasible. But I've just never seen it or fired one myself. The shield is a double action. So for those that don't know what a double action is when you pull the trigger, it not only cocks the gun, but it also releases the hammer or striker pin. This is a double action, so the trigger actually performs two actions at the same time with each pull. Single action, which we'll get down the list a little bit and start seeing that a little bit. The single action is the only thing the trigger does is release the firing pin or hammer. Okay? So most of the concealed carry weapons are going to be a double action because you want it to have convenience of not having to worry about keeping it cocked and having to worry about various things when you're in a life or death situation. So you'll see double action on most of these. But the shield has double action, and it is a all-around solid gun. It comes with 2 magazines when you buy it brand new, and the M&P 9 shield is obviously a 9mm, and it's just a good defensive gun. Now, I said that it comes with 2 magazines. Well, one magazine is going to have a flush on the bottom of the pistol, and it's going to hold 7 rounds plus the one in the chamber, and then one's going to have a slight extension to it, which will have 8 rounds plus the one in the chamber. The 8-round one sticks out a little bit below the handle of your firearm, so that will add a hair to the height of your firearm. But again, M&P Shield 9, very solid firearm for personal protection. Now we're going to go into SIG. SIG is definitely the top dog in the market, or at least one of them. SIG makes a lot of relatively affordable firearms, and they are accurate, feel good in the hand for most people. There's only been one model I had an issue with, which I'll have to look up and come back to you with it. But that one model is the only one. I've shot several SIGs in my life, and all of them are solid firearms. But the one in particular that we're going to talk about today is actually the P365. So this is definitely an everyday carry type of firearm. It is lightweight. It comes in at 1.25 pounds. It is relatively small. The height of it is 4.3 inches, which is definitely a little bit shorter than the Shield was. The overall length is 6.6 inches, which the length is a hair longer than the Shield. And on that point, for me as a concealed carry permit holder, for the ones that I want to be extremely concealed, the height is more of a problem than necessarily the barrel length or the length of the firearm. The length of the firearm goes down my leg. The height is what's going to show under my shirt more than anything else. At least that has been my that's been my experience with firearms I've looked at. Because frankly, the 1911 that I carry, it's a full-size 1911. Well, it's the commander size, which means it's a little shorter than the full size, but it's still a full-size firearm. And that particular firearm, I have no problem concealing everything except for the handle. The handle sometimes will stick out depending on what I'm wearing and what holster I'm in, but I have a couple of other ones that don't show, and really the only difference is the handle height, or the height of the gun. So keep that in mind when you're looking at CCW weapons. So back to the P365. This it's a little thicker than the Shield. It's going to be coming in just at 1.1 inches, which is a tenth of an inch thicker than the other one. But all around, this is a solid firearm. Again, it's a polymer. The trigger pull on this one is actually 5.4 pounds, where the Shield is 5.5 pounds. So the trigger pull is pretty much the same on both. For those that don't know what the trigger pull is, so it is the pounds that it takes to pull the trigger back and release the hammer. And this can vary. There are some guns out there you can actually adjust the poundage if it's too heavy or too light for you. But 5 pounds is a pretty solid area. I had one that was 8 pounds, which was ridiculous. That one was horrible. But a lot of the other firearms that I have that have just 5 pounds of pressure, or around that 5 pound mark, it's a fantastic firearm, feels good. So 5 pounds seemed to be a good area for a lot of shooters, especially first time shooters, because it's not so much that you're trying to anticipate the release, and it's not so little where you accidentally shoot when you don't mean to. But the SIG P36, it's a fantastic firearm for everyday carry, concealed carry. This thing runs right around the $700 mark, and I've seen it as low as $5. which, to put that in perspective, the Ilman P9 Shield, hits right in that 350 to $400 mark. So that's always going to be something that is crucial to a first time shooter, because most of them aren't going to want to spend a lot of money on their first couple of firearms until they know what they like, until they know what they need. So, that's a pretty smart area. Um, you can get up to $1,000 pretty fast when you start looking for the higher quality firearms. This next maker is Walther, and Walther has a couple of really awesome designs and a couple of really awesome firearms. So the one that we're going to talk about right this moment, and it's because of this concealed carry focus of this particular episode, and the firearms for that everyday carry, is the CCP from Walther. This gun has got technology that is above some of the other handguns. You'll find a technology like this in ARs and various other rifles, but in the CCP, Walther has created it to have a minimal recoil, which again is fantastic for a personal defense weapon, because you're back on your target quite quicker, faster, sighting, which means you can lay another round down to keep yourself protected. And so, CCP is awesome. So this technology, so every time you fire a round, that recoil actually moves the slide back, releases the casing. But there's still gases and stuff that happen inside the firearm. So the CCP actually collects some of those gases and pushes them forward to help the gun lay back straight and on target. This is a phenomenal, I know I said that like 700 times now, but it is a phenomenal concealed carry firearm. It has a good feel in the hand, and it's just really a good firearm, especially for a first time shooter. I believe it comes with just one magazine. It may come with two when you purchase it brand new, but the length of this comes in right at that 6.41 inches, and the height is at a 5.12 inches, which means it's a little taller than that SIG, but in this case, for me, I would go with the Walther over the SIG because of that low recoil technology that the Walther has. It is at 20 ounces, which is 1.25 pounds. And the slide width is right at 1.18 inches. So, I mean, this is a good, solid, concealed carry firearm, and fits really well in the hand. So, now the next one I'm going to talk about isn't necessarily a brand. It's more of a style and model. There's many brands that will create this particular firearm, but really the focus is on the model. So the 1911, and this has to be on the top gun list. Now, I do need to throw a disclosure out there, is 1911 is generally a full-size firearm, but Springfield and a lot of these manufacturers have actually created these smaller 1911s. Even Kimber's Micro 9 is based off the 1911 body style. So the 1911 is definitely my gun of choice. I love the 1911. I love the way it feels. I love everything about it. I love all the safety features on it. I love the trigger pull on it. And I love the fact that it comes in 9mm, which is what I choose to shoot, mainly because of the price point on it. It's easier to find 9mm rounds versus some of the other calibers. And um, it gives me a little more capacity. Now, there are some that choose to go with the traditional caliber in the 1911, which is a 45. And that's because of the knockdown power and the impact that the 45 gives, which might be the topic of our next episode of Safe Gun Fun Guns, is talking about grains, weights, and calibers, which is really important when you're talking about shooting. Uh, it doesn't matter what other people like, it's what you can handle and what you can handle quick and efficiently. So the 1911 comes in the 9mm and the 45 are the two sizes that I've seen them in. And the 45 is the most common because that is traditionally the size that it is. Uh, Colt makes it. Springfield makes a version. Magnum Research makes a version. Uh, Rock Island Armories does, which, big disclaimer there, I don't know anything about Rock Island really, except for the little bit of research I've done. It seems like it's a budget form of Springfield or for Springfield. I've never shot a Rock Island, but I have shot the Magnum Research. I have shot the Springfield, and out of the two, I love Springfield, but my Magnum Research has definitely been the top firearm for all the 1911s I've shot. This is a single action, which pretty much 1911s, that's what they are. They're single action. The capacity of the magazine can range anywhere from 6 to 10, depending on the caliber of firearm that you have. Now, this right here is the big thing. The 1911 is less than an inch thick. I mean, it is a super thin firearm. The barrel lengths can range anywhere from 3 to 5 inches, which means we'll put the overall gun anywhere from 5 to 8 inches approximately. Um, the height of it does vary slightly because if you get the compact 1911, it's not going to be as high as the full size 1911. So that is definitely something to look at. The weight's going to definitely vary. It is kind of a heavy gun. So because it's all steel, there's no polymer, there's nothing on the firearm that has any type of uh, weight reducing material. So, you're looking at 2 to 3 pounds. In some cases, it might be a hair over 3 pounds. But I don't think you will ever really see a true 1911 under 2 pounds. Though, going back to that Kimber, who's based off the 1911, is a little lighter than that. But again, it's basing it off the 1911. It doesn't have all the safety features that a typical 1911 have. It just has the body style of the 1911, and it has the sleekness of the 1911. The trigger pull, for me, I go to the range at least 2 times a week, some weeks more. And my 1911 has a 2-pound trigger pull on it, which is virtually a hair trigger. It does go up to 4 pounds, and 4 pounds is the most common range on there for trigger pulls. But no, my 1911 is 2 pounds, so it takes almost nothing, and there's little travel of the trigger. So to explain what travel of the trigger is, it's any of the space before and after the release of the hammer. Travel, the back travel, is generally most people focus on, though there is space in between on both sides, generally speaking. For my 1911, there's almost no travel either way, and the reset, which allows the gun to fire the next round, is virtually non-existent as well. It's almost immediate. So those are kind of the top guns that are on the market, and I'm going a little bit over what I originally was planning, so I'm going to go through my list fairly quickly. So we talked about 1911s and that being the top. Absolutely, for me, my Magnum Research Desert Eagle 1911 C9 is my top firearm. I carry that more often than not. Uh, I have found several holsters and stuff that helps concealability of it. And though it is a fairly large firearm, I have found ways to make sure that it is concealed on my body type. Everybody has their own body type, so that's going to change the way things are carried. Again, it's single action, it's 9mm. The capacity on it is 10 plus 1. Mine weighs in right at 2.5 pounds unloaded, and it hits right at 3 pounds when it's loaded. Barrel length on this is 4 1/3, which puts the overall length right at about 6 inches. The width of mine is 0.92, very slick, very slim. And it came with 2 magazines, which I carry more than that, which I always recommend anybody who concealed carries to have a bare minimum of 2 backup magazines, which would be 3 that you keep on you. Hey, more power to you if you like to have a 4th one. Never hear anybody complain about being prepared on that. The next one is a budget gun. So this is a budget gun. It is a great gun for someone who just needs something to protect their family with, and that you're not looking for anything fancy. And that's really the SD40, and they also have an SD 9mm. This price point on this is like $300, where that Desert Eagle that I was talking about, the cheapest you're going to find it's right at the $700 mark. And it can go as high as, for the Desert Eagle one, it goes as high as about 9, I've seen. Some 1911s like Springfield and Kimber, many of those hit into that $1,200 range. So this is definitely a budget style gun. And it's by Smith & Wesson. It's based off the Glock body style, which again is not something I like, but a lot of people do. The problems with this particular model is it does have an 8-pound trigger pull. The travel on it is god awful, mile-long trigger pull. It takes forever for it to release. But the capacity on it is a 14.1 for the 40. I believe the 9mm goes up to like 18 maybe. Don't quote me perfect on that, but I think it's 15 to 18, somewhere in there for the 9mm one. But this is a solid gun. It's not overly heavy. It's 1.4 pounds. It does have 2 magazines that come with it. They're double stack magazines. They're a polymer grip. Now you do need to understand that the grip will be a little thicker on this model versus some of the others that we've talked about. I would also like to mention, which I don't know why I didn't put it on this. Oh, I did. Okay, there we go. Now, if you do like that 40 cal, Stuger makes a budget gun that comes in right at that $360 to $300 or $300 to $360 mark, and it is their Cougar model, which is basically a Beretta. This is a Beretta firearm. Berettas have solid firearms. The only thing I don't like about Beretta is there's not a whole lot of customization that can be done to a Beretta, but this is a fantastic budget gun for someone who needs a gun to protect. I would actually recommend the Stuger over the Smith & Wesson because they're about the same price point, but the Stuger is, for me, a much better gun. However, the grip is a little large, and you are talking about a baseline gun. So literally, this is only for protection. There's no type of modifications you can do to this firearm. Moving up the list a little bit. So the Micro 9 is going to be the next one that is top on my list. This one is not going to be considered as a budget gun, but it is a solid concealed carry, under a pound in weight. Trigger pulls, probably anywhere from 4 to 7 pounds. Their website says it's 7 pounds, but it feels a little lighter than that. It has almost no travel. The trigger pull is very short. It just has a nice crisp break of the hammer. This is a great gun. This is my backup gun, the one that I carry when I'm really need to make sure I'm in deep concealment. And like I said, it is pretty much one of the lightest guns on my list or on any of the lists that we've talked about so far, being at 1 pound or just under 1 pound. It did come with 2 magazines that had a little pinky extension, which is definitely needed for this gun because it is hard to shoot when your pinky's not on the handle or the grip. So, and last one that we're going to talk about today, which this model is actually designed for the female concealed carry shooter. It is fantastic gun. I am pleasantly surprised with this gun. I have had the opportunity to fire it not too long ago. And it is the EAA Witness Compact. It's really, I butcher the name of this quite a bit, but 10 foliage Witness Compact is the correct model and maker. But this gun, I see it a lot online for right at $550, $600. But I've actually seen it as low as $230. So, I mean, this is pretty dang cool. It comes in single action and double action. It's a 9mm. Capacity is right at that 12-in-1, which seems to be 13 on the one that I shot, which I don't know if there's some variations there, but I know sometimes they state something a little different than what it actually is. Like my Desert Eagle, you look that up, it's going to say that the capacity is 9-in-1, but it's actually 10-in-1. The overall length of this bad boy is very minimal. It is 7.3, which, I mean, is longer than some, but it's really not that bad for the benefits that it has for the female shooters. Height is 4.5 inches, which, again, is pretty concealable. The issue with this one is it is a little on the thick side. It is just under 1.5 inches thick. So, that does have a little bit of a problem. But again, if you are a female shooter or just a shooter who has a hard time controlling heavy recoil, this is a really good gun. It's basically a copycat of the CZ75. Which CZ makes great firearms, but everybody rips them off. Basically, there are clones out there like you wouldn't believe on the CZ models. It comes in various colors, which again, let me remind you, this is a female marketed firearm. So there's a lot of different colors in this. The trigger pull ranges between 5 pounds and 13 pounds, depending on if you're doing double action or single action. No matter what, after that first round goes out on double action, you'll automatically go to single action from that moment on. It does have a polymer grip and a steel slide still, but this gun is great. The recoil is pretty much non-existent. And it's not overly heavy. It does come in just a little under 2 pounds, which is heavier than some of the other guns we've talked about. But Again, this is something that's designed for complete easy shooting. So, um, but anyway, so there is my list. Um, we're going to talk about in future episodes about some of my competition chosen guns that I am going to be using in competition. We will talk about a little bit of long range guns, but again, I really want to focus on self defense in this podcast. So that is my list. Keep in mind, everything is going to be based off of the individual, how well you shoot and handle that particular firearm, and how well you can make sure that no one else realizes you have it on you to keep you from being a target in a potentially dangerous situation. These lists are definitely my list that I compiled from various sources, and then some that my personal recommendation list is all mine. Everybody has their own style. My wife's style is definitely more of the CZ style firearms, where I'm a 1911 size firearm. So keep that in mind on both of these lists. It doesn't matter what's on there, it depends on you. You as the individual, you as the shooter, and how well you are going to be able to handle it. Thank you again for joining us on this second episode of Safe Guns, Fun Guns. Remember, feel free to reach out to me at safegunsfunguns@outlook.com or on our Facebook page at facebook.com/safegunsfunguns. And this is exciting, and I appreciate it. And remember to like, share, and hit that little bell there so you're notified every time a new episode comes up. It really does help when you give us a 5-star rating. So if you like this podcast, please give us a 5-star rating. And we will see you next time.